It's Jason with Kentucky Sustainable Living. I've got Shelly with Two Old Crows Homestead, and I've got Forrest with Vets for Child Rescue. And Forrest is on here tonight. He's going to talk to us about their organization, what they do, and then we're going to talk about the event that we've got planned with them coming up in October at our festival in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Forrest, thanks for taking time to talk to us and talk to everybody out there. I hope we get a lot of people in chat and a lot of people. I pushed it out a bunch of places to get the word out. But Forrest, thanks, and kind of tell us an overview. Take as much time as you want to, telling us about the organization and what the great stuff that y'all are doing.
Well, thank you, Jason and Shelly, for having me on today. My name is Forrest Sealey. I'm the Executive Director for Veterans for Child Rescue. I want to make sure that I'm clear, though. This is a veterans-based organization. However, I am not a veteran. I grew up with the founder who is a veteran. His name's Craig Sawyer, and we grew up together. And our paths took us in different directions. His path took him into the military. My path took me, I played college football. I thought I was going to play pro football, but ultimately it took me in banking. And at one point, we were out, he had asked me to be a board member of Veterans for Child Rescue. He started the organization to make a documentary. He learned that in Texas, how prevalent, in Montgomery County specifically, which is north of Houston, which is Harris County, he had learned from some people in the intelligence community how prevalent child trafficking was. And he just looked at them like they were crazy. And he said, wait a minute. He goes, I've been chasing terrorists in 60 different countries. And you mean to tell me there's more terror happening in our backyard than what I've been chasing for God and country? And so he invited me to come on to the organization. And so my goal is to grow the organization like a business, using best practices in the business sense to grow the organization. So what do? We do several things. Our primary function is to educate the populace on the human trafficking of kids in the United States. And what's interesting is that we talk to people all the time. When he started this journey, it was back in 2016. We actually formed the organization in 2017. People weren't talking about this topic. And they basically, if you ask somebody about child trafficking, they would always say over there, as if it were out of our country. And so when you look at today, up until the borders became open, it was a $38 to $50 billion industry in the United States alone, which is greater than all pro sports combined. And so our goal, if you think about it, if you're a football fan or a basketball fan or a baseball fan, I'm in Houston, so I'm an Astros fan. I got Astros t-shirts. I got Astros memorabilia. You drive around town, you see Astros everywhere. However, when you have an activity that is generating more revenue than that is got a lot of top cover, it's hard to get your mind around it. So our mission is to educate people so they understand how prevalent it is, what to look for, what to do with that information. Additionally, in doing that, we have a radio show. We have a TV show that we've just finished editing. We have Contraland that you can watch. It's a hard-hitting documentary at contralandmovie.com. I recommend that you at least go watch the trailer on YouTube. It's free to watch. It's a Hollywood level production.
It is an awesome movie. I watched it the other night after I talked to you on the phone, and I'm like, holy cow, that is great.
Well, it's I tell you, it breaks your heart because that activity, I can go into any city, into any state in the United States, and there are people actively wanting to have sex with minors. And so when you have a demand, we all know that especially whether it's black market or if it's free market, if there is a demand, there is a need to be met, and there are people that are going to try to meet that need and make money off of it. Okay. So we know this, and we can prove it time and time again. So what the other thing that we do is we run counter trafficking operations with state and local and federal law enforcement agencies. Craig, if you look at his resume, he was in the Marines. Then he went out of the Marines. He went into the Navy. He was a SEAL Team 6 sniper in the Navy, which is called DevGru. And he did. Then he became a federal investigator and a federal air marshal. He's what they call part of the original 33. So he went through a specific training program of investigations. So he's really good at putting together a template to teach law enforcement and work with DAs to have an ironclad case so they can arrest and prosecute these bad guys. They could be traffickers, they could be pedophiles. There's just a number of things that we work on. So we have a 100% conviction rate. So that is part of our mission as well. And educating the populace and catching bad guys and just wrecking the system. And the reason we're educating the populace, because I'm looking at two fine people that are on this live stream with me. You're exactly what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to work amongst people like yourselves, hardworking Americans that love their kids, love their community, and want to lock arms, surround the kids, and protect them from any harm that can be done. Because we know that until you're 18 years old, you should be able to ride your bike, play in the park, play football, baseball, learn reading, writing, and arithmetic in school, and that nobody should be messing with you because their little brains are not. They're not adult brains. They're kid brains. So they think about kid stuff. And, we grew up in an era where during the summer you had stubbed toes and skinned knees. That's how we learn life lessons.
Right. Yeah.
And I tell you, it's important that you have these opportunities as kids because they teach you life lessons. You learn really quick to put your shoes on. You learn really quick to once you skin that knee doing something stupid, you don't do it again.
Right.
But I know I have scars. I got scars on my knees and my hips from just normal stuff. And
oh yeah, I had Honda, the imprint on a Honda 4-wheeler or a Honda motorcycle burn on my leg for about a year before I had a motorcycle. So, and I wore pants trying to hide it from my mom. She's like, why do you have pants on? And she's like, it's summertime. I was like, oh, I don't know. It's okay. And she finally found out and she saw it was like branded Honda on there. So,
well, I can tell you this. Both Craig and we burned our legs and hands on many a Honda bikes in our day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like you were saying, Forrest, about educating people, I was fired up. We had the conversation last week, and I was fired up about it. I asked, what could we do? And you said, talk to your local law enforcement. And the light bulb went off. I was like, our local sheriff, we go to church together. And I was waiting Sunday morning. I ran into church. I found him. I was like, hey, I need to talk to you after church. And he was like, okay. So I told him there's tons of people around. He's like, text me all that stuff and I'll look at it and then we'll talk. I was like, okay. I sent him, I no telling how many texts, and we're going to talk about it sometime this week about everything. And he was excited about it, and I was like, let's talk and do this. And that's what you were telling me to do. Talk to your local law enforcement about it and get them involved in the situation.
Absolutely, and we will help them in any way that we can. And keep in mind, if you look at what law enforcement does, there's a misconception in society about their roles. Okay, I've met so many law enforcement officers that would put themselves between anybody in harm's way, but typically they don't get the opportunity. I tell people all the time that bad guys traditionally look around, and that law enforcement, a lot of times, they just investigate. So this gives them the opportunity to get into the fight, and we're there to support them and teach them and learn from them. We often learn a lot. I mean, every time we meet law enforcement, when we engage, we learn from these guys because they're out there every day pounding the pavement. But sometimes they learn something. Sometimes we learn that they encountered a trafficking scenario, they just didn't realize it, or they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they didn't know the signs and stuff of it then, right?
Yeah. You know, when you have a you have the situation where you have a pimp who has a relationship with his boy or his girl, who at that time may be of legal age, but they didn't start out that way, and they're conditioned to continue to do what they're doing because that's the life that they know. And you know, whenever you're sitting there, you know, when a law officer is dealing with some sort of an issue, it could be a domestic violence, it could be prostitution, it could be any number of things. But if they ask the right questions, they may pivot and say, okay, this is more complicated than I thought it was. This isn't just a traditional willing prostitution type scenario. This is somebody that's being forced to sell their body for sex, and they don't have any options. And so as a society, there's a lot of things we need to do. It doesn't just stop there, because the problem that you run into with that situation is that the boy, the man or the woman who is the prostitute, they don't have any place to go. They've got no money, they've got no house, they've got no car. And there are aftercare facilities, but oftentimes they're running full, you know, they're running at 120% occupancy, they're understaffed. So, you know, there's some areas which we can focus on as well. And we do have a relationship with one organization, which is Rancho Milagro out of Arizona, and they do equine therapy. And so we're often looking for other organizations that are, you know, that they're trying to do the right thing, spend their money the right way, and help people as best they can.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you talk to a survivor, they all have stories about interacting with law enforcement, and the one time that they try to get the law enforcement, you know, try to say, hey, this guy's holding me against my will. Well, what happens is that they arrest the pimp, they hand this person a business card and say, here, call this number. And that's most of the time is not good enough. And it's not necessarily the law enforcement person's fault. That's what they've been trained to do.
Yeah.
You know, so this is not an easy problem. You know, in your area, there are various organizations that play a role in what we're talking about, aftercare, for example, and you want to vet those aftercare, you want to collaborate with law enforcement. So if they do encounter this situation and they want to try to sever that relationship with the trafficker, and they have a plan, okay, they could put them in a facility, because what do you need? You need somebody's going to take care of you, somebody's going to give you food and shelter, place to sleep, a shower, and then they have to come up with a plan. It's a treatment plan and then a life plan. So you got a treatment plan to get you through whatever trauma you're dealing with at that moment, which the trauma will always be there. They have to manage it, but they also need to make a living. You know, they need to. We all know that making a living gives us self-worth.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you don't have a purpose and if you don't have self-worth, you're going to keep doing what you're doing.
Oh yeah. They'll just fall back into that if they don't have somewhere to go and something to do and a purpose. I could totally see that. The law enforcement officer, like you said, will just arrest the pimp and give him a card, and then the person is like, I have no idea what to do. And then I guess as soon as the pimp gets out, he finds that person again, and it's the same cycle over and over without the rehabilitation stepping in and breaking that cycle, right?
Exactly. And listen, law enforcement, and before we got on the call, I was kind of telling you that I had a hectic night and day because I went and picked up 2 runaways from, you know, a town north of me. And the problem that I ran into is that law enforcement's hands were tied. And I'm not upset with the officers. They were doing their job. They were communicating with their superiors. They were doing everything they could to help us. But what I wanted them to do and needed them to do, their hands were tied. Why is this? I'll tell you what I think. And it's because people like myself, you know, I'm 57 years old, and I spent the middle part of my life raising a family, working a job. And I always thought that those things were being handled by somebody else. They were being taken care of. But now when I look at these scenarios and what law enforcement are limited in doing. Here I had two minors. They were 15 years old. They were driving a vehicle, didn't have a license, no insurance. One of them was reported as a runaway. And I said, look, I need you to hold them for 24, 48 hours. I need you to treat them like a criminal. And that would have served what I needed at the time to try to resolve this situation, because one of them has to go out of state. So I was not at all angry. These cops, they were trying their hardest to help me resolve this issue. So I'm thankful for these guys. They were awesome. They kept their cool. But we as a society have created a situation that was impossible. Okay. I had a domestic violence case that somebody I know here about 2 months ago. It happened in Austin, and it took 10 days. There was an assault involved. They actually, a woman grabbed her own kids, took them. She didn't have custody. She took them from the stepmom, it was actually the dad's girlfriend. And so the dad's girlfriend ran her down and caught him in the park and got her butt whipped. And anyway, she did get the kids, and the boyfriend was a cop, but still it took 10 days to get a warrant for this woman's arrest.
Really?
Yeah, for assault. Okay. So that's just baffling. I don't want to, we worked with the law enforcement and we did everything we could. We provided every piece of information that they needed, but that's how long it took. I could sit there and badmouth those guys and say you're not doing your job, but that is not going to solve the problem, because I know that these guys were doing the best they could with what they have. But you and I know that you have a domestic, there's so many, there are a lot of different things in this spectrum of abuse, of assault, of sexual assault that are being handled in a manner in which none of us would be satisfied with. I mean, if you were on the opposite side of this situation, you would be, it's bad enough to go through a physical assault or a sexual assault. That's a horrible experience, because what people don't understand is when a man or a woman goes through sexual assault, this is a lifelong scar that they have to deal with. Some of them deal with it well, and a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
So
right.
On top of that, here you've gone through a sexual assault or a physical assault, and now you are treated. You have to be vetted, and the vetting process is no fun. It's being interrogated, because there are people that are making false claims as well. So it's a very screwed up situation. So as a society, I think one of the things I tell people is you need to re-engage into your local community. You need to re-engage what law enforcement is doing. You need to look at what the DA is prosecuting. You need to look at what the judges, what their sentencing is. And you need to decide as a society, as a community, what it is that you want from your bubble. Because I can tell you right now, a lot of these communities are not getting what they want, what they need, and what they think is right. And it's because we've sat back and allowed it to happen.
Yeah. Everybody's too comfortable.
Yeah, it is. And I tell you, what's funny is my wife has been on probably 3 juries. And I was probably 40 something years old before I even got a jury summons. And my wife was getting them every other year. And she's just
You're lucky.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that everybody I talk to, they talk about how to get out of a jury.
Yeah.
And me, I was really eager to get on the jury because I wanted to experience it. And it was a learning lesson for me. But I tell people all the time, why do you want the stupid people to be on a jury? Do you want them to making the decisions that are going to affect your community? I said, because you're so busy that you can't take a week off from your job and from your responsibilities.
Right. I mean, they call it civic duty for a reason, right?
And, Shelley, it's a great point. We've been programmed not to do that. So that's another way. If you're going to be on jury duty, then go be on jury duty. And I have one piece of advice for somebody that's going to be on jury duty. Jury duty is not a negotiation. If you go through the process and you believe somebody's guilty, and if you believe that they should serve X, if that's what you believe, if it's reasonable, you are not negotiating. Okay, it's not a negotiation, and I learned because the person that the trial, it was a criminal trial. We gave him 4 years. He should have gotten 10. And both not only the prosecuting attorney, but even the defendant's attorney was shocked at what happened. And so when in talking to them, and I will tell you this, both the defense attorney and they were great. They both did a great job. They were very professional. I was very fortunate in that situation. But what I learned was it's not a negotiation. And you may be the bad person in that group. And I was actually the foreman, and I was the bad guy because I was saying, I was holding to my, but I ended up caving in to the situation because I thought that was the only way we were going to make any headway. And what the prosecutor told me, he says, we would have rather have had a hung jury and learned from, the interviewing process and then retried the case because they felt very strongly about the case. And the defense attorney told us, he said, look, my client was guilty. I was just trying to get the least amount of time. He was very honest. And so I was grateful for the honesty I got from both of them in the process. And it was a great learning experience. So my advice to anybody, if you go on jury duty, if you have your convictions, if you have facts that you believe of the case, it's always about the facts of the case, that you stick to your guns. Okay. And because I can tell you, the prosecutor, they want a hung jury if they don't, if there's facts of the case that implicate your belief, whether it's guilty or not. It could be the other way around too. Okay. Yeah. For me, what's funny is we had an attorney on our jury, and by the way, it was a 15-year-old that we were trying, and I had an attorney on my case, and we were arguing whether it was aggravated robbery or aggravated assault. And if you read the law, it said, Jason, if I pointed a weapon at you and asked for your wallet, that is aggravated robbery. And so I'm debating it with this woman who was a lawyer. And so when I shared this with both attorneys, it's two prosecutor and one defense. I'm sitting with them, sharing it with them. They said, you're absolutely right. Basically, I got, I was a younger man then. I called her an idiot. It was a female attorney, and I called her an idiot. I said, you don't even understand the law, because I'm reading you the law, and it says, if I point a gun at it, doesn't. And you know what they said? Well, they were friends. I said, it doesn't say anything whether or not we are friends. And in the state of Texas, Jason, if you were here, and if I jokingly pointed a weapon at wielded a knife or a gun at you and asked you for your wallet or your property, that is aggravated assault. You're not a mind reader.
Yeah.
Right? You're not a mind reader.
Right.
So if I say it, if I profess it, so that's my point. As a society, you need to really understand what's happening in your backyard, in your community, and you need to engage, especially at the school system. The school board is a great place to do that.
Yep.
because we know that's an area where our society is being destroyed. I'm going to point out a couple of things that I'm going to recommend, and I've had the pleasure and the honor of interviewing a gentleman by the name of Boone Cutler and a gentleman by the name of General Michael Flynn. And some of you might know who General Michael Flynn is, but he and Boone Cutler wrote a book called The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Gen Warfare. And it was written like a field manual. This is important to understand because if you look at warfare, we are in a war right now. Okay. We are in fifth gen war. It's not a kinetic war. Okay. Because we've gotten so sophisticated, we can fight. It's a digital technology war. And the other thing that I recommend, and this ties into this is the 45th Communist Goals as read into the Congressional Record in January 10th of 1963. And if you go through that, and if you read these, there's a couple of things that when I was talking about schools, number 17, it says, get control of the schools, okay? And then it says, gain control of all student newspapers. Use student riots to foment public protests. So these things are very important to understand that we are in a war, and it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. It doesn't matter what you believe in. What matters is they are destroying this country. We can't even have a logical conversation about certain things. You're hearing crazy stuff that is basically what's happening is it's screwing with the logic chip in our kids' brains. Okay. And this is if you go look at our radio show, it's called Defending Our Children. Craig and I co-host this radio show, but I actually have done a couple of solo shows, and there's one that you look it up. It's my first solo. And I talk about these things. And one of the things that I talk about is technology. I would basically hold up my phone. Here, I've got another phone here. If you look at this is the enemy for our kids. And I'm going to tell you why it's the enemy.
I agree.
Your brain, your frontal cortex doesn't fully develop until you're 25-ish. That's where your logic chip is. And if you look at every generation, that delayed development, it gets delayed more and more. If you go back to when we were kids, the life that we lived is like we had a fort that we were building. Now, my mom and dad didn't give me cash to go buy wood down at the Home Depot. We scavenged for it. Okay. So somebody, old man, Mr. Jones would be building something. You go, hey, what do you do with those scraps? He said, you can take them. So you take those scraps with your buddies and you take each piece and you figure out what's the optimal place to put that piece of wood, right?
Yes.
Logic. That's where you're using your logical skills. When you burned your leg on that Honda, when you were riding a Honda four-wheeler, you burned your leg. There were two things you learned. Number one, you're not going to do that again. And number two, don't let your mama see it because she's going to take away the Honda.
Exactly.
That's logical skills. But this device, what it's doing is it's making our kids dopamine driven. Your brain emits a drug. It's based upon satisfaction. When you do something great, when you have a great moment, it squirts dopamine into your brain. And when that happens, you feel satisfied. Well, it's like anything. It's like sugar. It's like candy. It's like drugs. Anytime you get a constant flow of that, then you become immune to it. So you need more.
Yeah.
Becoming dopamine driven, what happens then is it keeps your frontal cortex from developing. This is a known fact. Okay, I've talked to some experts and they've explained this to me. But more importantly, one of the things that becoming dopamine driven is you're basically becoming instant gratification or instantly gratified. So if you're constantly getting what you want, it removes patience. And patience is something that's so important for kids to learn. Because what is patience? Also, in hand with patience is forgiveness. If you don't have patience, you don't have forgiveness. Today, you can go on social media and you'll see an unlimited, and these are adults, these are grown, pardon my French, but grown ass people at the Burger King, at Starbucks, at the airport. They're not getting their way. It's like you walk in and your coffee isn't fixed right. And they're throwing these temper tantrums. Now, Jason, if you and I grew up together, and if I threw a temper tantrum over something, you'd punch me in the head and say, stop it.
Yeah.
That's where logic comes in. So we learned really quick. You know, if I ever said something about your sister, you punch me in the face. So I quit talking about your sister, right? Yep. That's where we learn logic, because they become dopamine driven and they're not facing who they're challenging. They don't get that instant attitude adjustment that it teaches them patience.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what's happening then is that you've got this, we're removing forgiveness. And you know what happens when you have no forgiveness? I judge you on a single moment in time. Yep. And that is not fair in life. I can tell you this, I've done stupid things in my life. I've got moments that I'm not proud of. But there are a lot of things that I'd like to think that people would look at me and say, hey, you were always helpful. You always try to help me out. You did this for me. So I try to do more good than I've done bad. And I think most of us do that. But yet now we're seeing people being judged on single moments in time. It's because that frontal cortex is not developed. We're becoming dopamine driven. We're removing patience. We're removing forgiveness. And oh, by the way, when you have no patience, you don't become a functioning, or you don't have the right purpose in society. Okay. So now you have this entitlement mentality where people, they get out of school and they think they're going to make $75,000, $100,000 a year. when, when I was a kid, we were collecting bottles. We were collecting aluminum. We were mowing lawns. We were doing whatever we could do to make money.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was all about getting enough money because we wanted a car to get out of the house, because we didn't have all this technology to keep us occupied.
Oh, yeah. Now, if you try, we were 12 years old and hauling hay and cutting tobacco and doing everything. And now if you try to get a kid out in the tobacco patch or hauling hay at 12, they're going to be like, hell no, I'm not doing this crap. It's, that's corporal punishment anymore. So.
Well, and the whole underdeveloped frontal cortex or brain as a whole or whatever is also, like with what you all do, it's kind of setting kids up to be there. They don't pay attention. They don't think logically, and it's setting them up to become victims, and especially if they've got this all the time and they're in this all the time, they don't even have an awareness of their surroundings and all that kind of stuff. It's just detrimental. I kind of feel like.
You know what, Shelley, you are hitting the nail on the head. And let me tell you how important that is, because if I am being driven by this, what happens is there's this term that we are now understanding called grooming.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep. Happens here. Yep.
What is grooming? Well, number one is I want to put a wedge between you and your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so number two, I can represent myself as anybody I want to be. So let's say you're a 14-year-old girl. Hey, Shelley, this is Billy. I know your parents. I know you got in trouble with your parents. I hate my parents because they beat me. I hate my parents because they do this. And we start bonding.
Yep.
And before you know it, we meet up, and then you find out that I'm an adult, but I bring you gifts. I do whatever. And then the first thing out of my mouth is, don't tell your parents.
Yep.
That is a big warning sign. So as parents, we need to tell our kids there are no secrets between mom and dad and child. There are no secrets. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to commit to me as a parent to tell me what's going on, because my role in life is to protect you.
Right.
This is important because kids cannot advocate for themselves. And when they are sexually assaulted, they know it's wrong. They know it's wrong, but they don't know how to do. They don't know how to fight back. They don't know how. As adults, if I went up to a female and I grabbed her butt, she's going to turn around and cold cock me. She knows how. Being an adult, she knows how to advocate for herself. But as a child, they know it's wrong, and their little brains know it's wrong, but they don't know what to do with it. And then afterwards, the groomers say things like, if you tell your parents, they're gonna love you less. If you tell your parents, they're gonna get in trouble. If you tell your parent, they leverage whatever works for you so you don't tell your parents. I've talked to grown special operations guys. I've talked to guys in the military that have been through this, and they say, yeah. We just had a gentleman on our radio show who was in the Coast Guard, and he was telling us about he was being violated by a Catholic priest. He was in the Bronx, and you can go listen to it on our radio show. I was shocked. We didn't know he was going to tell us this, but the same story is, hey, if I tell you that I was sexually assaulted, then I'm not a man. It's a cultural thing. Okay.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we're here to change our culture of kids to not thinking that they want to be a man, but we want to set them up so they'll communicate. But best, we need to protect them. You need to always challenge those people in authoritative, men and women. They could be coaches, they could be Sunday school teachers, they could be teachers. Anybody that is working to get into that position of authority with your kids. And what you want to treat your kids up front is you never are alone with a single adult. And you let them know that. You
Yeah.
ask when you go to Girl Scouts or Cub Scouts, you say, hey, is there a situation, if you ask this as a parent, is there a situation where you would be alone with my kids? They'll tell you not. But what they'll know is, hey, Jason, I got to stay away from Jason's kids because he looks like somebody I don't want to tangle with. Okay. And if you present that as a parent, that you're a protector, and if you do it in front of the other parents and set that example around the squad, the coaches, the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, then everybody will be like, oh, that's a good point. And they'll start thinking and supporting you in that regard. I actually coached girls volleyball for several years, but I always made it, I basically got a team mom. And I said, look, there are going to be situations I need your help because I'm a dude, I'm a guy, and these are girls. I've got girls of my own. I have 4 sisters, but I know sometimes I need a mom. And I set it straight. I had this one girl one time, she was wearing a shirt. It was a weirdly cut shirt. She used to wear it every week to volleyball practice. So when she'd go down to pass the ball, she was hanging out. And I said, look, I need you to go talk to her mom because I can go talk to the mom, but I think it'll come off better. And she did. Next thing you know, we had a regular shirt. So, but I think that as parents, I was shocked that this girl's mom wasn't paying attention. I'm looking at her every time the kid would dive going, are you seeing this? And she's just clueless. You know what she was doing? She was on her phone.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, we were at the grocery store, and my youngest one is, he was, I think, four at the time. And me and my wife have always told him, do not talk to strangers, do not do anything. And he stays within sight with us all the time. He was like, I want to go to the bathroom by myself. So I was standing by the door. I'm like, go in there by yourself. I said, do not talk to anybody. So a few minutes later, he comes out and he's like looking around. And I'm like, what's wrong? He was like, some guy tried to talk to me. The manager of the grocery store came out behind him. He said, I am so sorry. He said, your son was having trouble getting to wash his hands and turn the faucet on. I asked him if he needed help. And he said, he took off running and said, I can't talk to anybody. And I'm like, dude, we got it wrapped up. And I explained to him. He said, I'm so sorry for scaring your son. I'm like, hey, don't apologize. I said, we've taught him to get out of that situation and not talk to anybody. So I was like, that worked.
That's exactly it. And you want what you also want to do with your sons and daughters. You want to talk about touching, okay? And if somebody touches them, they need to scream.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't touch me. And let somebody know. And you also need to be honest with them. And you need to use penis and vagina. You don't need to make it cutesy. You want to say, if somebody touches you here, you say, quit touching my vagina. The reason that's important is that if somebody does that to your child in an area and they scream it out, what will happen is this. If there's 10 parents around, if I heard, don't touch my penis or don't touch my vagina, I'm going to investigate.
Yeah.
Okay. And you may be the parent that's closest to that kid that goes around the corner and sees a man or a woman who is in a compromised position that you may witness. Now, that's why it's important. Because here's the thing. If you're a witness to something and the parent sees it as well, now you have corroborating stories that you can deal with that situation. Yeah. And again, the only way we're going to clean this up is to take action and stop people from doing this. And we've got to teach our kids how to best advocate for themselves and protect themselves.
And I told both my boys too. I said, if we're at the grocery store, whatever, and I said, somebody approaches you and tries to do anything, I'm like, you raised 9 kinds of hell. I'm like, grab stuff off the shelf, throw it on the floor, yell, scream, throw stuff, make the biggest mess and the biggest scene in the world. And I said, I promise you, you will not get in trouble. And my oldest one's like, so I can start throwing stuff everywhere and causing the scene. I'm like, dude, smash stuff on the floor and cause the biggest scene in the world. He's like, okay. And I'm like, you will not get in trouble for this if something like that happens.
You're absolutely right. What's interesting too is if you were to take any kind of a hard target training class, and this is basically a self-defense class or a self-awareness class, and I participated in these classes, but I also use this because I talk to people all the time, and one of the things that I tell women, especially when you're walking to your car, number one, get off your phone. Number two, keys in hand, sticking out of your knuckles. Number three, you make eye contact and you don't smile. Okay. What you're registering is I'm looking at you. Okay. I am looking at you. I can identify you.
All right. I'm paying attention.
I'm paying attention. You walk with confidence. You walk with your shoulders up and your shoulders back. You walk with a purpose. And then they're like, bad guys and bad gals will attack somebody that they register a body posture of weakness. So if you teach your kids at an early age, like you just said, pitch a fit, they start pitching a fit, those bad guys are going to quit doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So there are so many things that you can do. And I will tell you this, you could take hard target training classes. You can.
Oh, Forrest jumped out.
Always learn something, depending on who's teaching the class.
Forrest, you skipped out when you said taking the hard target classes.
All right, hang on. Somebody was calling me. Normally, I turn my do not disturb on. Let me do that real quick. Okay, so if you take you could take a hard target training class. You can take a self-defense class. Every class you take will be an opportunity for you to learn something new. And here's what's in this is important, Jason and Shelley. This is super important. I'll tell you why. I love the police. I love law enforcement. But when I said at the beginning of this, you are responsible for your personal safety.
Yep.
Okay. Because if you look at the amount of time it takes for you to make a phone call, for them to respond, bad guys, first thing that they do when they're hunting, they look around. If there's no cops around, then they execute their game plan. If they're going after your kids, if they're going to snatch your kids, they're looking around. So if they're going to, like my kids know when we're at Sam's Club or Costco or we're out shopping, they know when I start talking to them because I give them commands. I've had people approach me in the parking lot and I will say, I'll start talking to my kids, get behind me. And what they do is they grab my belt because where I go, they go. It's like a dance. If I go and if there's a problem, so I will address whoever is encroaching upon me in an authoritarian fashion. But I've taught my kids, and they know my voice when I say, get behind me now. They don't mess around. They do it. Because you may have a split second. You may have somebody approaching you and here's the thing. Most sexual assaults are +2. Okay, over 50% of women that are sexually assaulted, it's 2+ assailants. So Shelley, I walk up, I'm a female. I walk up into the Costco. Hey, ma'am, you know what time it is? You're looking at me. Hey, my phone's not working. My car's broke down. Well, in the meantime, somebody's sneaking up behind you. They are going to violate you or they're going to steal your money or your car. So what I've taught people is for a woman, for a female or male, you can carry a flashlight. Light night or day, you put that flashlight in their eye. You always carry that flashlight. Step back, ma'am, I can't help you. Step back, sir, I can't help you. And what that does is they think, oh, this is a cop.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, you're learning and you're teaching your kids because when they see that flashlight come on, mom and dad, I need to get behind you. And then I tell my kids, pan and scan. You look for a threat and you bark out if there's a threat. Dad, there's somebody on your 6, there's somebody on your 9, there's somebody on your 3. Okay. So these are things you can learn for these training classes. And again, we teach our kids these things. We teach you teach your mate, your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, you teach them and you practice these things because when you get scared, when you are in a fight or flight mode, you want your body to respond in a manner in which you've trained. Okay. Because first thing that happens, have you ever almost been in a car wreck and you're like screaming, you're not driving, you're like, you're trying to say car or stop or something.
Right.
because all the blood immediately, your heart is basically demanding blood because it knows you're about to deal with trauma. And so all that blood goes out of your brain. So your little brain ain't working as well. It's switching into what I call aux mode, AUX. It's saying, okay, I'm going to keep my heart running. I'm going to keep all the vital functions. You don't need to talk. You can listen, and your sight's going to be good and your hearing's going to be good. But that mouth, it doesn't need to work. Every time that happens, you're like, man, if I would have only yelled this wouldn't have happened. But these are things that you can do. And then I highly recommend, weapons training. If you're, I'm a big advocate of personal security and weapons training. Okay. There's plenty of, and I'm in Texas, so it's very common. You may be on this live stream and you may be in a place where it's not so friendly, but I'm telling you, if you're walking in the streets and somebody's going to get you, it's your job to protect yourself, because the police, what they're going to do is they're going to investigate, because by the time they get to you, by the time in the weapons industry, they call it the 21-foot rule. If you've got your gun drawn on somebody, they can move 21 feet before you can fire your weapon. Before you register, there is a threat, before you are on target, before you squeeze the trigger. Now, some of us that are seasoned and have trained, that isn't the case. But a lot of people, they will get their license, they will get training, and they don't practice. Okay. So again, I'm talking about personal security, training your kids. But I'm going to circle back. Going back to your kids, and this is going to be the most unpopular thing that I'm going to say, because and I'm guilty of it. I got my kids a phone when they were 12. If you get your kids a phone, get them a flip phone. Texting and talking is all you need, because everybody says, well, I need to be able to track my kids. Texting and talking, because the average child has 3 artificial intelligence engines talking to their kids at any given time. And do you know what artificial intelligence does? Number 1, it doesn't get tired. Number 2, it has an agenda, and it doesn't care what mom and dad thinks.
Yeah.
Right.
So you cannot control. The best thing you can teach your kids is to read books.
Yeah.
But you know what reading books does? It teaches them patience. Remember what I was saying about earlier. Teach your kids patience. They read the book. They got to wait. They got to read through to the whole book to see what happens at the end. If you notice, kids today are not going to the movies because a movie is 2 hours long. That's too long for them to sit and watch. They want to see a 1-minute video. They're being spoon-fed 30-second, 1-minute video. So if they don't like the video, they swipe on. Man, they like the video, dopamine. They swipe to the next one. They're looking for that hit, that fix. If there's a TV show called a Netflix series called The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, I watched it.
And it talks about this.
It's messed
up. You haven't seen it? Well, I tell you what's interesting, Shelley, is you had somebody, a high-ranking person from Facebook and a high-ranking person from Twitter, that they were testifying that this is the world we live in. And they said, our kids don't have phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They designed it. They were the designer, and they're saying, our kids don't have this. What does that tell you?
Exactly.
I want to switch gears here a little bit. Forrest, I don't know how in depth you can go, but tell us a little bit about, like, what exactly does Vets for Child Rescue do? What do you do? Like, do you, I guess what I'm asking is, do you get like leads and you go investigate and you go find, people who are trafficked or all of that kind of stuff? Or do you just let the police know? Like, what exactly is it that you guys are a part? And if you can't get into that, that's fine. I don't want to mess anybody up or get anybody in trouble or whatever. But can you give us an idea about what exactly you all do?
Okay. We have a playbook, and this is more of our founder. This is his lane. But I'm going to share with you what I can in his lane. So being that he was a federal investigator, and of course he's a tactical specialist in from his training, what we do is he has a playbook of things that we can work alongside with law enforcement. Now, one thing that's very important, a lot of people don't understand this, and that is we go after bad guys, okay? And we investigate looking for kids. But when we have a kid, when we have a child under 18 in our sights, we bring in law enforcement legally, unless we have written consent of guardianship. We cannot take custody of those kids or that kid. That's why we work in law enforcement. They are licensed to do that. And so we help them with the bad guys. And keep in mind that you have a lot of very skilled investigators in law enforcement. You have a lot of skilled people. But what happens is that in their bubble, they're executing the same plays that they're used to doing in their world. And so we come in and we say, hey, here's what we can bring to the table. It's different than what you're doing. We'll help you do it, and we'll help them rack up some arrests. And these are great arrests. I mean, when you get a pedophile or if you get a trafficker off the street, you prosecute them. These are big victories because the average victim count, it's the victim is 70. The average pedophile, according to our studies with Dr. Judith Reisman, who, if you Dr. Judith Reisman, who is in our show Contraland. She discovered she basically outed Alfred Kinsey as a pedophile and a sadomasochist that really has tried to change the culture in America.
He sounded like a super creepy dude.
Yeah, Alfred Kinsey. When you watch and you go study Alfred Kinsey, and I'll tell you how creepy he is. He was being funded by the CIA to do experiments on kids. This was in the 50s. And one of the experiments that he would do is how many orgasms can an 18-month-old child have in a 24-hour period?
Oh my God.
And so, Shelley, Jason, why as a society, why do we need to know this information? We don't need to know this information. That information doesn't serve our community. It doesn't serve mankind anything. Okay.
And I hope there's a special place in hell for that guy.
Well, I do too. And so, but the fact is that these type of folks, they have an average of body count of 70. So that's not the number of times, because they do it multiple times to these kids. So we feel like if we can help the law enforcement get one of these guys off, that we are reducing the future. We'll stop the madness with the existing. We can reduce the future,
right?
And hopefully, do some good in that community. So, so what we do is, and I don't want to get into the specifics, but what we do is we engage. We have different types of engagements, different types of operational templates that we do, and in essence, we meet with law enforcement, we meet with district attorneys, we come up with a plan, we execute the plan, and then, we do it again. It's rinse and repeat.
So how does the people that are in your organization, are they volunteers?
We have a core team, and then we have a lot of volunteers. Now, so on Craig, on his side, we have what's called our Viper team. And this is what makes us special. When we run operations, many of them, we have what they call a tier 1 special operator. And I don't want to offend anybody that's in military. So these are the highest trained special ops guys. Okay. And so Craig, his Viper team, basically, these are guys that he's trained with and fought with. So they're battle tested. And why is this important? Because some of the places we operate are scary.
Yeah.
Okay. So we provide support for law enforcement. I haven't checked the statistic lately, but about 10 years ago, the average law enforcement officer nationwide is about 3% that fire their weapons on duty. Okay. So there are many good law enforcement officers out there that they've drawn their weapon, but they've never fired it. this is a very important distinction. The guys that we bring in, they have fired their weapons on duty many times. And so because of their training, remember when I said earlier, when you're in a fight or flight mode, all the blood goes to your body. Their heart rates typically don't go over 65. You know, they stay calm and cool. And so if things start getting really hairy, you need some people there that I call them risk management. Okay. By the way, somebody's asking the question, Forrest Smith, how many arrests do we have? We have 23 convictions. I can't get into the number of arrests. In the last 3 months, I probably have, I want to say in the neighborhood of right under 20 warrants that are being prosecuted and 3 arrests, I think. Or 3 or 4 arrests. I'm getting my ops confused. But
that's in
what's
the last
happened
3 months, you said?
Yeah, we've accumulated this we've accumulated a lot of information, data, and evidence. And so what happens is on the ones that we didn't do the arrest, we have ones that we have guaranteed arrests on or guaranteed warrants. And then we have others, we've accumulated enough evidence that they're putting together the warrants. There's stuff that has to be corroborated. I mean, as an investigator, there's work to do.
Right.
And I'm not going to get into their world because I don't want to interfere with what is currently in the queue. But you know, we're constantly we use videotape. We videotape a lot of stuff. You know, we have camera crews, and we're looking. I'm one of the camera persons now. I operate a camera, so I follow these guys around and document what's happening, and we turn that evidence over to the DA and law enforcement so they can use that as their evidence.
So do you all travel all over the place, or do you have teams in different locations, or how does that work?
Yes, we do travel if it makes sense to, depending on what we're doing. We'll travel and we'll bring we have assets that are that may be necessary for the type of operation that we're going to be running. So depending on where we're going, what we're going to be executing is who we're going to bring in.
Gotcha.
Well, tell us, Forrest, how just your average person that stumbles on this and watches it, and they are doing amazing work. What's the best way for those people to help out your organization?
Okay, if you go to our website, you can go to v4cr.org or vets, VETS, 4, childrescue.org. And you can go. We have a whole bunch of educational material that you can learn from. And the first thing I would say is watch Contraland. You can go to contralandmovie.com, or you can go on our website.
Take the time and watch the movie, everybody. It's well worth the time to watch it.
But if you go to the top, also we have a radio show that you can go listen to past episodes, and you could go through and read who you want to listen to. I highly recommend Mark Strauss, who's a technologist. He built an AI on a phone, and he could talk about the technology and how it's impacting our kids. You can listen to. We just interviewed separately General Michael Flynn and Boone Cutler, who wrote the book 5th Gen Warfare. And this is a great educational piece. So there's a couple that you can do. Kim Kelly, who is our marketing director, we've interviewed her twice. One of the things that one of the interviews is we have a list of, we published an article of all of the, the hashtags, like, for example, protect our children. They're being suppressed by Instagram and other platforms. So we went through and we listed. Yeah. It's like, okay, if I said to you, Jason and Shelly, if I said, look, let's build a coalition and here are the hashtags we're going to use, and it's protect our children. It's stuff that you would think anybody would be agreeable on. They're suppressing this. So we can't find each other. This is by design. You can't tell me that this is not by design.
Yeah, but if you put some link to something pornographic, they're going to throw it everywhere. But trying to do something for real, meaningful, it's like, oh, we need to suppress that. Let's squash it.
Absolutely. It's crazy. So if you go to our website, we have a section called Tools and Education. It gives you internet safety tips, red flag apps. It gives you identifying a predator. There's so much educational. You can join. You can actually join our volunteer pool. And typically, I have a volunteer coordinator that puts you on a team, and they work collectively. One of the biggest things that we do is we do a lot of fundraising. And Jason, you're talking about doing a fundraiser for us. 98% of what we get is from individuals. We don't have a lot of corporate sponsorship, which we're working on.
Show them the awesome fire pit that y'all are doing.
Okay,
That thing, you know what surprised me about that? That stinking thing weighs like 150 pounds. I was like, holy crap, that's a for real fire pit.
Yes, we are. We actually have a sweepstakes. It's a Father's Day sweepstakes, and I'm trying to figure out how I could show you.
I'm going to buy some tickets for that. I want it.
Okay, let me see if I can flip my camera around. Okay, let's see here. And if you go to our website and you go to shop, you could see that. Let's see. I don't know how. Okay, I'm just going to tell me if you see the fire pit.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is cool.
That thing weighs almost 150 pounds.
That is neat looking. Y'all need to be buying tickets for this. How much are the tickets, Forrest?
Okay, so we do these bundle prices. So, for example, one ticket is $10. 7 tickets is $50. 15 tickets is $100. So we do these bundle prices. The value of this is about $700 plus shipping. So on it, you've got 3 different logos. You've got the Vets for Child Rescue logo. You've got a tattered American flag. And then if you look at our website, we have this logo that Craig drew of a soldier from the behind. It's a silhouette holding 2 children's hands like he's walking them into the sunset. Okay. And so, man, I'm trying to figure out how to get in on this action because I told Jason, my neighborhood, we live by the fire pit during the winter.
Right.
We sit around, we put a fire pit out in the middle of the street, and everybody, that's where we commune, talk about, problems of the world or whatever you want to talk about, and cigars and whiskey, or, whatever you want to do. I love the fire pit.
Yeah.
So, you can go there. We also we have a merchant store. You can buy hats, like you got a V4CR hat.
You got great shirts. I like the shirts.
We got various jerseys. We do take contributions. If you're in the corporate world, we're looking for corporate sponsorships. You can reach out to me directly on info@vetsforchildrescue.org. You can reach out to me, and I can tell you how you could sponsorship, because we've got, with the radio show, I'm looking for radio show sponsorship. I've got the TV show that we're rolling out. I've got a package for that. I can run an op. If you want to run an op in your community, I can tell you how we could put that together. So if you're a corporate sponsor, we say, hey, this is what it would cost for us to bring my team there. And I'll be totally transparent in that transaction. But you could take that money that you would traditionally donate to some sort of a nonprofit or a cause, and we could put it back into your community, catch some bad guys, learn and teach law enforcement in your community. We'd love to do that. So there's a lot of different things that we can do in that regard.
Spags has a question in our chat. It says,
There.
do you have to differentiate between domestic trafficking and port trafficking, or can you work with all agencies?
We do work with Homeland in some instances. Of actually, the last op we did, they had sent representations down there. Our focus is in the United States. Now, we do get action on the borders. So, but what we don't do is we don't go off of U.S. soil at this time. I mean, I'm not saying that we won't, but that gets into Craig's lane. He makes those decisions. But at this time, we focus on the United States.
All right. Well, I guess we can talk. We're we're having our Homesteading and Preparedness Festival October 28th and 29th. And Saturday night, the 28th, that Saturday night, we're doing a charity dinner for Vets for Child Rescue. We've got ticket sales are starting online at KentuckySustainableLiving.com. It's going to be a prime rib dinner. Most of our speakers and our guests from that are going to be speaking and attending the festival are going to be there, so where you can get some time to talk to those people, hang out, eat dinner with them, and then our proceeds are going to go to Vets for Child Rescue. We're hoping to raise, Forrest, you and I talked a little bit about it usually what it costs money-wise to do an op. I'm hoping to raise enough money that we can do an operation is what I would really like to do. And I would really like to do one in Kentucky if we can do it personally. So
I'd love to come to Kentucky. Okay. I've been there before. It's a great state. A lot of good people there. Beautiful trees. I love the woods, man. I like trees. So yes, we would love to come to Kentucky.
Yeah.
I know a few years ago, there was a guy that was from like emergency management in our area that came to our church, and he talked about trafficking and all of that kind of thing. And I don't know. I mean, I knew about this. This has probably been 6 or 7 years ago, and I knew that this happened. It just didn't occur to me like all of the ways that it happened, I guess. But he said that one of the biggest trafficking events in Kentucky is the Kentucky Derby.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that
Absolutely
blew my mind, because I don't even look at the Kentucky Derby as like, like a big football event or, like the Super Bowl or something like that. I look at it as it's the Kentucky Derby, and it's a hometown thing, and it's horses. It never occurred to me that something so nefarious would be going on, right here in our state. And it really made me look at these things in a different way. It just made me more aware, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I mean, every time it comes around now, every time the beginning of May comes up and people are talking about doing the Derby and all that kind of stuff, that's the first thing that pops into my head. And I hate it that it even pops into my head. It just taints everything.
Shelley, that's a great point. We actually ran an op in the Super Bowl, and we turned over 5 cases to federal law enforcement, and we're still waiting for the results of that. But I will tell you this: what we've learned is that anytime there's any, March Madness, Kentucky Derby, Indianapolis 500, you name it, if there's a big event where you have a large congregation of people, there is activity that's happening. And what we're doing now is we're working in that space. We're getting intel, and we're a couple of years ago we started doing what we called a digital assault, and we identified all the businesses in the area. We put together training packets. We fax, text, email anybody that we could send that information out so people would be aware. And so this year we sent a team out there, and they did some work, and we're going to continue doing that at various events. And the Kentucky Derby, it's not immune, because if you watch Contraland, one of the things that Jason saw is we arrested some pedophiles. And these pedophiles, deacon of a church,
IRS agent, an Army recruiter. These are people that you're sitting next to in your church. They're sitting next to you. They're sitting next to you at the PTA, at the soccer or baseball or football game. They look like your friends. Okay. And so the only way to solve this problem is to, weed them out and fight as a community. Because look, we're right now, I feel like David throwing toothpicks at Goliath.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
But you're on the good side, though, so it doesn't matter.
You know what? It doesn't. I will tell you this: it doesn't bother me at all. And I am so grateful for folks like yourself who are interested in helping and getting into the fight and educating people to do this, because again, we can't do this alone. If you look at how society is today, here's something I want you to think about as well, because I have people that are working on legislation. And my problem with working on legislation, I think what they're doing is great work. But the problem that you have with legislation is there's a lot of legislation that's on the books today that isn't being executed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a while ago, Craig and I had lots of conversations, and I came to this conclusion after conversations and meditating. But I feel like our policymakers, there's 4 different positions you have as it comes to human trafficking of kids. And if you look at Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Nygaard. Peter Nygaard was the Canadian version of Jeffrey Epstein. He got arrested and convicted. He had his own little island. But what I truly believe, until somebody proves me wrong, is that there are 4 positions as a policymaker, whether it's state, local, or federal. There's 4 positions you can fit into or have as to human trafficking of kids. And that is, here's the 4 positions. It's either you're ignoring it, you're participating in it, you're benefiting from it, or you're being leveraged by it. And we all, at this stage of our lives, have witnessed a policymaker that was up and coming. You voted for them. You bought into their sales pitch, and they came into office, and then they did the opposite of what they said they were going to do. And you're looking at them, scratching your head. And every cycle since Reagan, the first president I voted for was Ronald Reagan. I voted for him because my parents voted for him. He got shot and he lived, and I thought he was a badass. That was my logic. Got shot and he lived. Man, he must be badass. But after that, over time, you start getting educated on politics. But there was always, every election cycle, there was that one person that you're looking to make change, and they said all the right things, and then the new person on the block, and you voted for him, and then a year later, something important comes up, and you're like, wait a minute, why did you do that? So you rack your brain trying to figure out why they did the opposite, and they are flipping and flopping on TV and the radio. But after digesting those cycles and digesting what we're witnessing now and looking at the amount of money being spent, I truly believe that either you're ignoring it, participating, benefiting, or being leveraged.
Yep.
And I think it's come to fruition in the last 5 years because life has been accelerated. Everything that we thought was conspiracy today, we now 90% of conspiracy we believe.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think start looking at your local DA, start looking at your the police and what they're executing. And then they may be doing some things because that's all they know what to do. But we want to make change.
Know it's corrupt all the way up, or we would know who Epstein's buddies are, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we kind of do know who they are, but that would be coming out. So we know it's corrupt from all the way up.
Oh yeah.
When you take somebody who showed up at the Capitol on January 6th, who just showed up, that has had no due process, who's been jailed for over 600 days or over 500 days, and yet we're spending our DOJ money on that nonsense, and we're not spending our DOJ money on prosecuting what we believe are pedophiles.
Right.
At the highest level,
Right.
There's something wrong.
They're absolutely wrong. I agree.
100%.
I call it the nothing to see here, folks tour. Every time I hear them, there's nothing to see here, folks.
Right. Oh, that's so frustrating.
Yeah.
I was in San Bernardino. I actually did helped a good friend of mine. We built a manufacturing facility there, and I was there during the riots, and I would count every night 50. When I get to 100 gunshots, I would quit counting. I just lay there at night trying to go to sleep. When I get to 100, I'm like, okay, I made my 100. I can go to sleep now. And there wasn't a lot of arrests being made.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's crazy and not to get in that rabbit hole with the whole 2-tier justice system is just ridiculous. So, I mean, it's crazy what all's happening with it. Forrest, tell us some other stuff, some good stuff that y'all are doing and everything like that. I mean, we've covered a bunch of stuff. I want, my whole thing with doing this charity dinner is I want to raise as much money as we can for your organization, and that's why we're doing it. And I do have to give 100% of the credit to Billy at Permapastures, because if it was not for Billy talking about Vets for Child Rescue and wearing the shirts,
Yeah, we wouldn't even know who you
I
are.
would know nothing about it.
Yeah.
My stance on it is there's a ton of organizations doing stuff, but you really need to vet those organizations. In my opinion, is that Billy's donating money and supporting this. Y'all have been vetted, so 100% of us finding y'all is through Billy. So.
And we're grateful for Billy and folks like Billy. Thank you, Billy, for getting us known. I will tell you, one of the things that you can do is you can follow Craig on his social media platforms. It's Craig. Craig Sawman Sawyer is his handle, and they're very specifically. He did a radio show with Nino Rodriguez. I'm sorry, he's an MMA fighter. He's a great guy. But one of the things that he did was he talked about how to vet information, because we are on the receiving end of misinformation.
Yeah.
I mean, serious misinformation.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how serious of misinformation. We've got 2 lawsuits that we've won against trolls. One of them was for I think it was 4.3 million or 4.6 million. And this year we won a $500,000 lawsuit against somebody. And these were trolls that are spreading misinformation. So Craig went on this live stream with Nino Rodriguez, and he talked about how to vet your information. Being a federal a federal investigator, he kind of laid out how to do that. And so I will tell you this. Sorry, my nose is itching. Vetting information, it can be difficult under today's times because there's so much good replicated information. But there's things, for example, on our website, you can go and you can find the lawsuit. We have the lawsuit posted on there. So that's how we do that. And, frankly, I have people email me every now and then, and they have questions, and I try to answer to the best of my ability. But if you're out there trying to find, for example, if you want to find a local facility that's doing aftercare, go visit them. Okay. Yeah. And look, one thing that I will also tell you is the first thing that they do is they want to know what your ratio of money, what you're spending. And we post our 990s, which is our tax forms, online for you to look at. But I will tell you, we spend a lot of money on compliance and liability. Okay. And so one thing that you can do, and this is a long-term goal, is we need to reduce the amount of fees. I have to register in all 50 states. I have to be audited in 22 states. I have to pay for a full-blown audit, and I have to have an accounting firm that is customized to nonprofits. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that we do that we have to do. So it's money that I could be spending on operations, but I have to spend it on admin. Don't like it, but it's a requirement. So make sure when you're talking to these folks, have a better understanding. Don't automatically assume that when you're spending dollars, these are required dollars that we have to spend to operate. And it's when you get to a certain level, you have to do that. If you're a startup, it's not so bad, but when you get to a certain level, you have to do that. And we're not a big organization. There's only a handful of us on our core team, but we do a lot with the little. I spend our money like it's my own. Okay. Yeah. And I'll give you an example. When we run our teams, I buy groceries. I'm a grill master. We cook food. We might go out to dinner once or twice, but I like to cook for their various reasons. But frankly, I feel like I can cook a better meal than what I can buy.
I guarantee that.
So
that's frustrating, though, that you have to spend so much money on those specialized accountants and those audits and all of that kind of stuff instead of that money going directly to your mission. I mean, I know that that's part of it, but that's got to be frustrating.
That's the government getting their part.
Right.
It's the government getting their part. And it's funny because, you know, and of course I have a service that I use. It is so taxing. It's more than a full-time person's job. So I have a service that does it every single day. As a matter of fact, today I had to sign a document and send it to one of the states. Every day I'm sending something, they're requesting something. Okay. We need you to get it notarized. We need to get, you know, you've got to have a board member sign this. You have to have a executive director and the president sign this. I mean, it has to be notarized. So I'm constantly running around doing that as well.
Oh yeah, I could see it. I've got an LLC for my business, and setting that thing up, I thought was a nightmare. I couldn't deal with all the stuff that you're doing.
Well, and you know, I do truly understand. I mean, I can be the devil's advocate, and I do understand why they do what they're doing, because you want an organization that is representing what they're doing, and they're doing it. But what I don't really understand is part of this process. They're not asking me, or they're not validating what we're doing. What they're doing is they're validating all of the financial questions, but they're not coming in and saying, "Hey, are you doing what you're doing?" Now that gets revealed in our audit, but I've not had any state say, "Hey, are you putting your messaging out? How are you putting your messaging out?" I could say we got a radio show, we got a TV show, we've got Contraland. I can easily illustrate that, but those questions are never asked. It's always financial type questions, which, you know, in my mind, being having that investigative mind, it would be like, okay, are you doing if you look at your mission statement, are you executing your mission statement? And that's what we try to do. We try to execute our mission statement.
You mean you're not running it like the Clinton Foundation?
I wish I could get their kind of money, because I could do a lot with their kind of money.
I'm fairly certain that there's certain keywords that you probably shouldn't say on here, and you probably said several of them.
I do not know the Clintons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did not kill myself.
We don't want you to unalive. Okay.
All right. Now, and I'll tell you a funny story. Just recently, somebody wrote in and they made a claim that we were spending a lot of money on cars and trips, and so I sent a picture to I didn't put it online, but I sent a picture. I said, I'm currently on an op. I'm going to send a picture of my odometer reading. It just hit 155,000 miles. If I'm driving a new car, where is it?
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
There's always going to be people that are like, you're spending too much money on this, you're spending too much money on that, and it's like there's certain money you got to spend, and there's always going to be haters, especially when you're doing something good and worthwhile. There's always going to be people.
Well, my board of directors, they are all business persons, and I take their counsel for how we spend our money. You know, my background it was at an executive level in banking, but I'm not an expert. You know, I'm just I'm a servant to the cause. And if somebody says, I think I can save you some money, I'm all ears.
Here, we got a question right here, and she's trying to do it without me getting a strike.
Are these children that are being trafficked listed as missing?
Oftentimes they are. There are, I've heard numbers between 80 and 300,000 kids that are currently missing. If you go look on, I'm trying to think, it was NCMEC, I think they showed the number 80. We think that number is low, but yes, a lot of these kids are missing. Now, keep in mind what I tell people: when you're being trafficked, it's a two-way flow. So I'm in Texas. So if somebody gets grabbed, they're going to Mexico. And then from Mexico, they're going somewhere else, because the smartest, you know, as a business, if you put your business hat on and you want to take your product, you want to move it away from the source. So then the ones that are being trafficked from Europe and Asia, they may be coming through Mexico, but again, you're getting them away from the source, because the source is looking. When a kid goes missing, you're looking in your area. And so, you know, it's important that when those kids get missing, that's why they say the first 24, 48 hours are important, because that there's a point when they're out of reach. You can't track them. It's hard to find them.
Yeah. And that does make sense.
So does your organization focus on finding missing children, or does it focus on intel that you get about trafficking rings?
It's more on the intel side. The short answer is that we want to focus on missing children. There are a lot of moving parts to that. We've been working on a game plan. We've been working, think of it like this. I, from a 100,000-foot level, have a plan. I don't know the details, but I know it's doable. It's like, okay. And so getting all the right players to participate, it's like herding cats. And I can't really get into those details because I'll be giving away, how I would be doing it. But I will tell you this. I meditate when I run. I'm a runner, so I run the woods. I love running trails, and that's when I talk to God. Sometimes I cuss him. Sometimes I ask him for wisdom, but I keep circling back to the missing kids. Okay. And it's a topic that's always in the back of my mind. And so it's a very complex problem. I think that I know enough smart people that could come up with a plan that we could make a difference. Like I said, I'm working on it, and it's complicated. So we focus on the trafficking, the pedophile side, because it's there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I almost feel like you could it's just a bigger impact because you're stopping, you have the whole cycle of abusers abused people tend to become abusers, and if you can cut that cycle off, then that's just exponentially stopping something. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? I don't know.
No, you are making it has the greatest impact. The greatest impact to society is educating them.
Yeah.
And then if I educate you on what to look for, then I teach you how to gather that information. And then I teach you how to deliver it to the right people. What's interesting is that we get a lot of leads that are hard to determine what they're saying. And so, for example, we all know when you're sitting around a campfire, there are those folks that that you grew up with that are great storytellers. And then there are those that aren't. And so the great storytellers, they have a timeline of telling a story. They have a delivery methodology. I get people that they send us an email and they'll say, I think I'm being trafficked, or I think so-and-so is being trafficked. And they'll send me a picture of something has no information whatsoever. It could be an empty container in a field that has bushes growing up. Well, what about that image tells me that there's trafficking going on? I don't see any bodies. I don't see any signs. So one of the things that you can do is get on our website and learn and educate yourself so you can gather that information. So if you actually identify something, what do you do with that information? And once you get that information, if you were to say, call a cop, and or if you see a cop, how do you give him that message? It could be, hello, sir. I was in the stop and go. I witnessed a young lady or a young man. They were being escorted to the bathroom. I tried to speak to the child about something benign. The adult wouldn't allow it. Therefore, I thought it was really sketchy. I pushed the issue, and the parent or the adult interfered. I don't know what's going on, but you might want to check them out. One thing about law enforcement is they're great at being nosy. And I love that about them, because if they see something, they'll go check it out. And oftentimes they'll find something. But if you give them a clue, you point them in the right direction, you give them information, then what will happen then is they'll go investigate. It could be you have to call a phone number. Who knows? But the biggest impact we can have on society is getting everybody educated. And then you'll know what to see. You'll know what to do with that information. And this is how we're going to start. This is the groundswell that we're starting to see. People are talking about this. So that's in my mind, one of the biggest steps that we can do at this time.
So if we do have information, if we do see something, is that who is our local sheriff, local police department? That's who we're supposed to contact, or is there a hotline, or do we email you? What's the best thing to do there?
If you go onto our website, there are under tools and education, there are a list of numbers that you can contact. Certainly, if there is imminent danger, you call the local police.
Okay.
If there's imminent danger, you call local police.
Hey, here we go. Forrest, we got somebody special.
All right.
Billy.
Hey,
Billy.
Billy,
That fine young man with that
Forrest.
cool
Forrest,
outfit
this is
on.
Billy.
You might recognize the shirt, Forrest.
I do recognize the shirt.
Well, yeah, when Jason sent me the link, I was like, I better change shirts.
Good move.
he's got
Smart move.
several of them. He wears them all the time.
Good move. And hey, Billy, we just released a new jersey. I don't know if you've seen our Warrior jersey, but you need to take a look at that.
I can't wait. You know, it's funny because you guys have clearly had a bunch of I've heard Craig Sawyer and a bunch of other interviews, some with Doug Hagman, how they were cutting you guys off at the hip with the money as far as being able to process money. And then, of course, your website, it sure is curious. I was having a discussion today with a very well-known, let's say, podcaster, doing something of a consultation on the phone with him. And he was telling me that, his payment servers and all these other things. And I said, and his websites, whenever it's anything dealing with anything patriotic, and particularly anything of a nature of what you guys do, that they're basically coming down like Thor's hammer on you guys.
So
they are.
When he was telling the website, the name of the website, I picked up my phone and I typed in the website into the chat. So it would be in the chat. It never came up in the chat.
Yeah.
So, and I kept watching and it never, other messages popped up. My message never popped up with the link to the website for their website.
Can you see that link on my browser?
Yep.
Yep, we can see it.
There it is. And you can go to V4. We've shortened up. We have the domain v4cr.org. So
That's
an
the one
easier
I
version?
typed in. That's what I typed in, and it wouldn't bring it up in the chat.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll
How
tell
many
you what.
steps is that?
Hey, it came up on mine. And then Miss Sharon said only moderators can post. But you did that. Oh, well. Well, we got it up. It's up there now.
Okay.
All right, cool.
I was trying to buy swag. I kid you not. I was doing everything I could. In fact, I think it was Craig's wife sent me this shirt the first time we raised money for Vets for Child Rescue. And look, the only way I know her out of this thing, I got to take my hat off to Jason and Shelly, and I can't wait to have maybe all of you guys on the podcast with me and the YouTube channel, every possible way imaginable. I want to do everything I possibly can that we can raise as much money to. I would give everything I have if it meant we save just one kid.
Right.
The horrors that are going on with these kids, like the numbers you were given a moment ago, Forrest, are just dreadful. I mean, I don't even know how the good Lord stays his hand based on the depravity that we now accept in this country. And all I know is that if money is what it takes to get at least one kid rescued, man, I'll give it all I have.
It's going to take a lot more than that. It's not just about the money. It's getting everybody educated, getting into the fight, and starting with your own community, because you can make a big impact in your community. Earlier on, Jason is working to see if we can get some action in Kentucky. We'd love to come to Kentucky and do some work there. But no, you're absolutely right. Watch Contraland. Check out our radio show. If you think that you can get Craig on, if getting him on your podcast, we'll get him on your podcast. Whatever you think you can do so we can get the word out. The more we need to herald these messages about our kids, protecting our kids.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest. That's why I applaud Jason and Shelly for what they're doing. They got the biggest collection of doers are going to be right there in Kentucky with the festival they're putting on. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to help promote it and get as many other people to do the very same thing, because the truth of it is the heart of America are at these festivals. In fact, the very people in this chat, the very people we're talking to right now, every time we see each other at these events, it's like a homecoming with family members you haven't seen in a long time.
Right.
And everybody's like, we already know each other, and we're expanding these groups every single time. So the more awareness that we can get, at least in these enclaves where we have people that are into preparedness, permaculture, practical living, chicken tractors on meth. Yeah. But when we get this, when we congregate ourselves to have the advantage of our joint wisdom, it would shock you what comes out of these things. And particularly, I'm just can't wait. I love, Jason, your idea of being able to, if we could raise enough money to at least sponsor an op, man, I think that's I don't know what that costs, but I think we ought to shoot for it.
That's my goal, is to raise enough money to do an op in Kentucky.
Billy, you brought up something very important, and I'm from Texas. And one thing that I tell people all the time when I talk about logical thinkers, the smartest guys in the room, you guys fit in that category. And I'm going to explain this to you. And I call them the tradesmen, the rednecks, okay? And the reason that they're smartest, the rednecks were the first breed of conservationists. They're the biggest recyclers. So here, I tell people all the time, every single day you got an electrician or a plumber or a farmer. An electrician's got 10 feet of wire, he's got a 12-foot run. But he's going to figure it out, okay? They're problem solvers. They're thinkers. And what's important about this mindset, this type of mindset, is that I don't claim to be the smartest person. I may have a conversation with you about something relatively benign, and you would say, hey, I've got a solution for that, which may help into this fight. So when you look at this problem, the guys that fit in your category, you're the ones that are going to come up with the best solutions overall, all the pieces of the puzzle to turn society around. Okay, all this bureaucratic BS, all this, bully pit, stuff that's going on for politicians, that's not problem solving. They get up there and they talk about all the things they're going to do, but really the people like yourself in your community, you're going to be the ones that fix society. And it's going to take a long time. This is a generational issue. We have got to teach our kids we have to teach them to be better stewards to our planet, to respect authority, those sort of things, and to teach them logical thinking. And so they know, I got to respect women, I got to respect men, I got to respect the elderly, I got to treat all people the way I want to be treated. And once you start ingraining that into society over time, over generations, we can bring us back to where this is not an issue. But I'm telling you that the logical thinkers are the people that you're talking about in your world. Because I all my friends it's funny because I have people that I know of that are tradesmen, and that you wouldn't know it. They've got money, they've got a retirement plan, they drive an old beat up truck, they don't live very large, but they're smart. And they know, hey, I don't need the latest and greatest technology. I'm going to put my kids through college, and they're not going to go for anything like, they're going to learn a trade. They're going to get an engineering degree. They're going to be a doctor. They're going to be something that they can earn a living. I'm not going to put my kids through college to get some weird degree that they're not going to be able to earn a living off. And that's what I told my kids. Hey, if you're going to go to college, you're going to learn something.
Well, like Bobby said, Spags said a moment ago, and it was on the screen, that we're looking, well, first of all, we're looking for political solutions to spiritual problems when we get down to brass tacks.
You're absolutely right.
And government, and like you said a moment ago, government can't fix this. And Forrest, you said it perfectly, because based on the information I have and the people I associate with, you couldn't have said it better. They're either complicit or involved in some way or another. So expecting a solution is like, from these people, is like expecting a fox to investigate a chicken coop. So
Oh, we lost Billy.
He starts talking about that stuff, and they cut him off. He'll come back
all the time.
Well, that. And hey, I see that happen all the time. You're absolutely right.
Oh, Billy said it when him and Aaron T. Scott start talking about stuff. They always get cut off.
Yeah.
And I actually talked to Aaron T. Scott on the phone, and I got cut off with her a couple times. We weren't even talking about real kooky stuff, honestly.
Yeah, I think they follow her around. So I know we're going on like an hour and 40 minutes that we've been on here, and it's been a great conversation. You've given us a lot of great information and some things that we need to think about, because we don't want to be in those categories that you gave us, right? We want to be part of the solution. So Jason said that our festival is October 28th and 29th. The evening of the 28th is our charity dinner that we're doing for Vets for Child Rescue. There are our festival. It's the Kentucky Sustainable Living, Homesteading, and Preparedness Festival. You can find out information about all of our speakers and sponsors and all of that stuff on KentuckySustainableLiving.com. You can go there and purchase tickets for that charity dinner. We would love to see you there. All of our speakers are going to be in attendance. You'll be able to sit and have dinner with them and talk to them and ask all the questions and learn all the things. But one of the things I want to point out, just because we're talking about this, our festival is kid friendly. We're going to have kids activities that we're going to be doing. And there's probably, I mean, right off the top of my head, I can think of a couple dozen people. Most of them are in our chat that are not going to let anything happen to any kids that are going to be at this festival. They will make a quick introduction to a wood chipper if anybody even thinks about it. So come
It'll
and
probably be the safest place for kids.
Right, exactly. It won't be like the Kentucky Derby at all. So come and hang out with us and help us to support this organization that we feel is doing a great work for communities everywhere. We would love to have you. And yeah, you got anything to add, Jason?
No, Forrest, you might wind up coming if you get around to it, right?
If I can get out there, I would like to come. We'll see where my schedule is at the time. One thing that happens is sometimes we'll get somebody pencil a date for an op, and that would be the one thing that might interfere.
Yeah.
Oh, and we're totally cool with that. Go save those kids. that's not a problem.
But I could
the money.
I could zoom though from an undisclosed location if I have to.
That'll work too.
We should be able to set that up even if you can't make it. So.
Yeah. I certainly want to be there to eat some of that prime rib.
Yeah. So it's going to be a good dinner. And I guess, we're going on almost an hour and 45. We'll cut it. Guys, I appreciate everybody. Billy, thanks for coming on, even though you got cut off. But thanks, Billy, for coming on. And guys, I appreciate everybody in the chat. Share this video out because it's about getting the word out for their organization. It's not about, us doing great things. It's about them doing the great things for these kids. That's why we're doing this. But share it out to everybody.
Make sure that you go check out the Vets for Child Rescue website, because just like Forrest said, they've got tools. There's things that you can go on there and read about to help you be more aware of what's going on, to better help protect your kids or, kids in your area or whatever, things to look for that, traffickers may be doing or whatever. And it'll just make you more alert, more aware of your surroundings. And I think that we could stop a lot of this if more of us paid attention and got out of these things.
Exactly. All right, guys.
Indeed.
Y'all have a good night. Forrest, thank you a bunch. I appreciate it. And we will see everyone later.
Thank you, Jason and Shelley, for having me on tonight.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.